Welcome back, and Elena's here to run us through the French newspapers. Hello, Elena, and you're going to start off with Libération. It's taking a look today at those topics the French presidential candidates aren't or haven't been talking about very much.
Yes, it might feel like we've talked so much about the election campaign, we've covered every topic under the sun, but Libération has got at least 5 things they reckon should be part of this election campaign and haven't been. So they're poverty, the environment, the care system, justice and health. Now, why are those 5 big issues not a part of the election campaign then? Well, they reckon it's just because they're too tricky for the candidates. In terms of the health system, for example, there's a massive deficit in France's famously generous health system. Now, in order to fill it in, the candidates would either have to suggest people pay higher contributions or they get less free healthcare, both of which would be so incredibly unpopular. The paper says that none of the candidates have really come up with a decent proposal to do anything about it at all. They're just trying to shove it under the carpet, according to the paper. Same is true for the care system. Lots of elderly people now getting themselves into huge debt because they just can't finance their residential care in old age. The state can't finance it either. None of them are really addressing that, according to the paper. And then there's the question of people living below the poverty line in France, with which, according to Libération, there's 8.2 million, which is an awful lot, and an awful lot of potential voters as well. But the paper says that none of the candidates are really trying to tackle this problem. Their policies are ending unemployment. They're aimed at young people who've just come out of school or people who've only recently lost a job, but really long-term unemployed people, the tricky ones, if you like, they don't seem to have very much policy directed towards. So Libération says these people are important. You can't just forget them.
Yeah, they're very important topics indeed, and they weren't covered at all by Nicolas Sarkozy. He, of course, is seeking re-election. He held a big rally on Sunday here in Paris. Didn't talk about any of these topics, but he did attack the ECB, the European Central Bank.
Yes, he thinks that they should take a bigger role in helping bail out the Eurozone's impoverished and indebted countries, indeed, like France. Now, Le Figaro, the newspaper which of course backs Sarkozy all the way, agrees with him in their front page editorial today. The ECB should be serving Europe, it says there. They say that, of course, the Bank of England or the US Federal Reserve print money to boost the economy when it's needed in times of need, and that's partly why countries that can control their currency, like Britain, haven't quite seen as much of a run on it as the euro has. Now, he wants to see an active ECB that takes a role and helps bail out the Eurozone countries. Now, this whole idea of the euro and what should be done is something that the candidates have had quite a bit to say about. François Hollande, of course, wants to renegotiate those austerity-based European treaties that were signed towards the end of last year by Sarkozy, who himself seems to be calling them into question in recent speeches, saying that European pushed austerity has gone a bit too far. So that's what La Croix is looking at on its front page today. Growth, the new European aim. They're examining effectively if those austerity policies that are doing so much damage, as they put it, in Spain, Italy and Greece, are the only way forward. Do we need more austerity in France? Or if Hollande is re-elected and he starts renegotiating these European treaties, could he change the direction of the whole continent? They reckon he could. Just because voters in places like Spain, Italy and Greece are already so disaffected with austerity policies, they might well be happy to see someone in Europe take a different direction and start building a policy that's a bit more based on growth.
So plenty of policy differences between these candidates, but it seems a lot of French voters just can't quite make their minds up, and there are just a few days to go before the first round of voting.
Yes, it's Sunday, of course, so they are running out of time to make a decision, but 22% still haven't made it, according to Le Parisien. Now, there's 22% who say they are definitely going to vote. It's not quite the same as ones who say they won't turn out at all, but they just don't know how. Now, all the candidates have got their last-minute strategies to try and win these people over. Now, the paper talks to some people who say they haven't decided, and they say, well, that they don't feel the candidates are really talking to them, especially young people. They feel they just don't feel represented. The candidates aren't really addressing them. Even if they're fed up with Sarkozy, they're not very inspired by any of the alternatives. But the candidates have their own ways of trying to address this. Sarkozy's new slogan apparently is the silent majority, according to the paper. That's to say people who haven't really made their voices heard he's trying to address. Marine Le Pen's got a new ad campaign deliberately aimed at the undecided France. She talks about in it. Whether or not they'll vote for her is a different question. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the far-left candidate, is basing his last-minute strategy on the web, according to that newspaper, trying to win people over via social networks. And François Hollande's socialists have gone for the old-fashioned tactic of knocking on people's doors. They've got thousands of people out across France, apparently, knocking on those doors, trying to win over the last-minute undecided voters.
And at his rally on Sunday, he called for people to come out and vote on Sunday, didn't he? Germany. So we'll have to see what the turnout is then. Thank you very much, Elena, for running us through the French press, and thank you for watching live from Paris. Do stay tuned to France 24.